Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Matthew, and I have the privilege to be here with this exciting group of people as we talk about radical faithfulness in action. And before we get too far into it, I just want to give us a chance to do some centering and grounding. So we're going to bring in a practice that comes actually from Irva Baden, who will be hosting the program with us this next year as an on-campus facilitator. And so I invite you to get comfortable wherever you are, as comfortable as you feel like you can be in this moment, knowing that our bodies are all different. And to take a breath. And we're going to have some time just for you to be with you and call your full resource to you. And so as you breathe, notice where you are connected with the earth. Just notice whether that connection is through your seat or through a floor. Just notice that connection. Welcome, Niceem. We're doing some grounding to start. And so you can just be where you are. Notice how you're sitting. And as you do, I want you to think about roots sprouting out from your feet and moving downward into the earth. Whether that's through the floor, through the car, through the chair, wherever you are, just noticing how you get to connect down through the foundation of the building or through the cement. Into the earth, into the soil. And welcome your roots going deeper and deeper. And as you're there, with each breath in, I invite you to welcome in nourishment from your ancestors. Whether they are ancestors whose names you know or not. Whether you're thinking about humans or plants, you're welcome to think about ancestors as you do in this moment. As you breathe in each breath, welcome in those that nourish you and who have created the ground that you are on now. And as you bring that nourishment back up to you, notice your body. And then, even as you keep breathing, start to think upward to the sky, to the stars, to the universe, to the divine spirit that is there. Your words for it are the true words for it in this moment. And I invite you to stretch yourself upward, 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 upward. And as you breathe, stretch as if you have strings stretching out into the sky and into the stars. And from here, when you breathe out into that divine connectedness. The air you breathe has been breathed before. And now start to bring your attention back inside again. And with each breath in, bring in that nourishment from your ancestors. And with each breath out, breathe out into spirit and into the divine. Bringing in nourishment from your roots and letting it go out like branches of a tree. And just take one more moment here. That even across the distance, we are connected. And as you do, start to bring your attention back here together. Whether you are live and joining us, or you are joining us through the recording, come back to this moment where we get to be together. So hi again. My name is Matthew. I am one of the facilitators for Radical Faithfulness, and I am so excited for today. It feels like a bit of a dream that I've been having for some years of inviting people who've been a part of this program over time together to share reflections. Lena, who is the education coordinator at Pendle Hill, had the brilliant idea of recording it and having us come together to share these stories that we don't always get to hear, and also to answer some questions about the program too, and not just from our perspectives as people who are holding it as facilitators and staff, but also with people who've been through the program. So before I say too much more, I'm going to pass it to Lena, who will go over what's going to happen during our time together.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you. I am, as Matthew said, the education coordinator here at Pendle Hill. And one of the things that I am going to do tonight is help us keep on track for our time so we can end promptly at 7. But our basic agenda is this welcome and opening, which Matthew just started us with. We'll do some introductions of the different folks who are going to be sharing tonight. We'll also then get into some discussion where the past participants who are on this call tonight will get to share just some of their reflections, some of their answers to a couple of different questions. And then we'll be able to open up with any further questions from folks considering the program. We'll share about how to apply for this year's cohort, and we'll close with a closing ritual before 7 p.m. One request to make is to mute yourself if you're not speaking. I'm also going to be managing that. So from my end as the host, I can mute and unmute people. So I've already muted Kathy, who's joined us tonight, just to know I might be making those decisions, making those choices just for the flow of the recording and the call. So thanks for bearing with me through some of that technology. And everyone who has the sort of Zoom app on their phone or on their computer also should have access to the chat. If you have any technical problems through the course of the call, you can send me a message in the chat, like, you know, sound cut out or something like that, and I can try my best on this end to troubleshoot. You can also raise your hand in the chat when we get to the question and answer at the end. You can do that by going over to the chat, and you can hit the little the little dots that say more, and then you can make sure that you're seeing everyone publicly. And there is a place there where you can raise your hand. You can also do that by clicking on the Manage Participants tab, and there's ways to raise your hand there as well. So I don't anticipate we'll need to use that until the end, but just to offer some of those tech pieces. Yeah, and then I like to pitch it over to some of our folks joining tonight to introduce themselves, with name, location, groups you're involved with, and what's a moment from radical faithfulness that sticks with you today.
So I think, Wendy, if you could kick us off, please.
Hi, I'm Wendy. My pronouns are she and they. I am from Philadelphia. I am involved with Left Roots, which is a socialist organization, with the Caucus of Working Educators, which is the insurgent rank and file caucus that is about to win power over the PFT, the largest public sector union in the city of Philadelphia. And I'm happy to be here. I went through Radical Faithfulness in 2017. What's a moment from Radical Faithfulness that sticks with me today? I think that, actually, I don't know if it's a moment or a series of moments, but what was really interesting to me was the way that in my year, there were two Black people, me and Holden. But what was and Holden and I got to be tight and good friends. But we also really bonded with Sarah, who was a white woman from Alaska. And I have incredibly tender feelings about Sarah. And I just thought our trio was one of my favorite things from Radical Faithfulness. Check.
Can you choose a person you want to pass it to, Wendy, out of us?
Angela.
Awesome.
Hi, my name's Angela Hopkins, and I live in Ithaca, New York. Let's see. Oh, I actually was in the program 2015 and stayed there, finished that program, the White Privilege Conference. I was working on that and left directly from Pendle Hill to Ithaca to actually begin the work that I had been working on at Pendle Hill and in the Radical Faithfulness program. So I can share a little bit more about that later on. But it's pretty much taken up the most of my time, moving into a new city, getting a new program started, all of the startup stuff. And we're just starting to feel like we're able to take a breather now. So yeah, that's pretty much all about me for the moment.
And Angela, who do you want to pass it to?
Is Lycine on? Is he set up? I can't see him, so I wasn't sure if he came into the room.
I think we lost Nyseem. Nyseem, are you there?
Nyseem.
Yeah, gone from the participant list. So Lena, how about you go on?
Sure. My name's Lena Blunt. I am based here in Philadelphia. And as I mentioned, I work at Pendle Hill. I took Radical Faithfulness in 2016. It's actually what introduced me to Pendle Hill. So it's a program very near and dear to me. I also do work with a group called the Earthquaker Action Team that does a lot of work around environmental, economic, and racial justice. And I think one thing that has really stayed with me from my experience as a participant in Radical Faithfulness was there was one day I got like really angry and agitated, and Matthew, who was facilitating at the time, could tell I was like getting impatient and was sort of like, what other options are there? I see you're getting impatient. I see you're getting agitated. What else can you do right now? And I was like really annoyed by that question. I actually didn't like it very much. Um, but I think one of the biggest things that I've taken from radical faithfulness is this idea of like increasing my range of motion. Yeah, and I'll pass it to Naeem, who I think is back. Naeem, could you introduce yourself, name, location, groups you're involved with, and a moment from radical faithfulness that sticks with you today? You might be muted.
Naeem doesn't have an audio connection right now, just a video, I
Okay,
think.
I see. Well, then I'll pass it to you, Matthew.
Sure, sure thing. And let me just look at my notes for what's next. Oh, this is a question. And this is for anybody who is on the call so far, Wendy or Angela and Naeem, if you end up hearing us, you're welcome to jump in as well. But I'm curious, like, what drew you to be a part of Radical Faithfulness as a program? Yeah, Wendy.
I was recruited to Radical Faithfulness by Zane Nakota, who at that time was in Left Roots with me. And I liked the idea of it because I liked the idea of being able to explore the spiritual roots of my revolutionary being, and trying to be able to understand the relationship between my commitment as a revolutionary and my very, very deep faith. So that was what drew me to Radical Faithfulness.
Yes. Would you want to chime in, Angela?
So I'd have to say that the thing that drew me to radical faithfulness, and it was just radical faithfulness initially, as opposed to radical faithfulness in action. But there was always this understanding that it is the focus is around discernment, how we are to live our life, our faith through our actions. So that's always been there from the beginning. And I think it was really just the issue around living a radical life in community. And that's the reason why I really felt led to come to Pendle Hill, to spend the time, really looking at how to do that, particularly in a time and space where the area of my call was not something that folks were really comfortable about as a society. This was before this latest uproar around racism. So it was kind of what I consider quietest period. So it was just really to kind of find a time and space to really work in a space where I felt that folks wanted to listen and to hear. And I certainly found that. That was the thing that was most, that was my takeaway, was the fact that it was a community of folks that really, were there to listen, and we nurtured one another.
I'm wondering, like, for y'all, and Lena, feel free to jump in too and answering questions, because I haven't been a participant in this program, but you have. But like, how did your participation in the program affect people around you? Yeah, Wendy.
Well, first of all, it was 3 weekends. So that affected like all the other work and all the other things that I was supposed to be doing. But I think the other thing about it was I really liked being able to tell people, oh yeah, I'm tooling up to radical faithfulness, because in most of my like socialist and revolutionary corners of the world, people do not express a lot of faith or have a sense of the ancestors. So I think maybe that's my favorite part, getting to tell people, yes, I'm going off to radical faithfulness to explore the spiritual basis of my revolutionary being, and then having them have to ponder that.
Mm. I'm curious, like, how did that then turn back to those folks? Like, when you came back at the end of the week, what showed up for people? Or
No, I mean, I think people are kind of sort of confused.
generally, yep.
The connections between building a better world and the ancestors. So I basically feel like it generated questions, a lot of questions or some questions, but don't really have a sense of, how it landed concretely for folks.
Totally. And part of what I was thinking about also is the questions feel helpful. And I remember back then you got asked into like a spiritual elder role in a direct action, which I don't know if it was your group or was another group, but it felt different. This is me trying to dig up memories. And I'm also curious, Angela, if you have other thoughts too about like, how did it affect people around you, or how now does it affect people around you?
So I was thinking about this. I don't really know exactly how other folks were affected in the process. I know that there was a really strong sense of community that was built, and which was really great. The other thing is that in spite of the fact that everyone who came to the program had a different sense of call for their lives, but then there was these threads of connections that we found regardless to what we each felt called to in our lives, and learning about how all of our calls were connected as people of faith who were really wanting to live intentionally in the world.
Yeah. And welcome, Gail and Niceem, whenever you're able to hop back. Feel like we're getting previews of you. Oh, y'all keep doing something. Thanks for making it so close, almost. And so just before we switch, also welcome them in, I want to ask you, Angela and Wendy and Lena, another question. How would you describe this program to somebody? Oh, Niceem, you're welcome to join in this too, and Gail also. But how would you describe this? If somebody was like, what was this thing that you just did? Oh.
Well, initially, I felt like, the program has been tweaked along the way since I started, but initially I thought, oh, that just sounds wonderful to be able to just take time away from the world and sit and focus on dreaming God's dream in the world, how to be a part of that. I thought, I don't have the time for this. I have a life. This isn't going to work. And the thing that I found really helpful along the way from the beginning really was the staff's attitude about the program. Radical faithfulness is really about everyone really like gathering around the call of each individual. It's not about lecturing a certain type of worldview or theology or whatever. It's really about gathering of people who are committed to walking the talk in the world, and just trying to find ways in which we can support one another in that. And maybe it sounds a little kumbaya-ish, but when you really get down to the really hard parts of discernment, which represented by the box for me, the box I'm talking about. It's really, overcoming those demons, those things that keep you from living your truth as authentically and intentionally as you can. The box was an opportunity after we had been together. Is it okay if I explain that?
Yeah, sure. I don't think the other people experienced it, so.
Oh, really? So, I really am not a real public kind of person. I enjoy small groups and conversation, but put me out with lots of people and I kind of freeze up. And we had this assignment in which we got dropped off safely, and really kind of pitched our little around what it is we felt called to in the world, and being there and being able to succinctly say, this is the work that I feel called to, and describing it to people as they pass back and forth was very, I tried everything I could to get away from it initially, to get around it. But there was such a sense of accomplishment having done it. Just being able to conquer one's greatest fear around, well, are people going to boo me? Are people going to listen to me? And just recognize that's the radical part. And later on, it proved very helpful to me, because when I left there, I literally left there to pursue my charge, but it was in a partnership situation which fell apart. And my whole thing is, it's like, okay, so what do I do now? And just realizing that go with what you know, you put one foot in front of the other and you carry on. And that's probably the most significant thing that I kind of took away from the experience. My understanding about life in community, I grew up in a community where just faith in action, what we call the internal and the inward and the outward experiences, were just something. I mean, I understood that at the age of 9, so it was not new to me. However, the closeness of the community that I had initially was wonderful, but that's not our experiences. We're not guaranteed that experience out in the world. So being able to recognize that, for me, radical faithfulness was not about a faithfulness that I find in community or in another person or in the world. It's the faithful relationship that I have with the Creator, however you may understand that to be, and recognizing that the humanity, we're all human and we have this level field, and that we're just called to do the piece that we're given individually. And that was a very good takeaway for me there. And there were reasons for that now, I recognize, reflecting back.
And Wendy, did you want to offer?
Yes, but will you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Sure. How would you describe this program to someone?
The program, I think the program is really open so that it incorporates people's different understandings of what radical means and what faith means, and how those things come together in terms of social justice. At least that's what it meant for me. Yeah, so it was a, you know, sort of a, it was mostly white people, and that presented all kinds of different white supremacy issues. Um, and so if I had to describe it, I would say that I struggled to feel like I was getting the space to explore the relationship between my faith and my revolutionary being. To think back, I also think that I learned important lessons about sort of what's real and the obstacles um, that you just have to sort of get through.
I hear that. Yeah, applause is getting clapped. Angela.
Can y'all hear us?
Yes, now we can.
Hey, everybody.
Hello and welcome. I feel like you all are in some ways right on time, as Wendy was someone who ended up recruiting y'all to this program, even through the challenges of it that were so very real and didn't disappear the next year. But just a welcome. If you want to just introduce yourselves, who you are, where you are, pronouns, and just like, let's start there. Let's just start there. First, get yourself in.
Hey, everybody. Nassim, he, him pronouns. Based in North Central Philadelphia. Come from the Stadium Stompers. We're actually at a Stadium Stompers steering committee meeting right now. So they were double. We actually have like 4 meetings tonight. All at the same time. But it's fine. We make it work. You want to go?
So I'm Gail. She, her. Like Nassim said, we're at Stadium Stompers meeting right now. Trying to say hi to, those are our Stadium Stompers. And I love the Radical Faithfulness because, especially at the time that it came, I was going through a lot. I'm still transitioning. I'm learning so much about that as well, but having that so soon after things happened, it was perfect. It was like such perfect timing. Not just having support around the fights that we were doing and the battles that we were waging in the city with the organization, but the battles I was waging within myself and dealing with all of my personal issues. And, you know, I realized that my faith rose to the top as well, because after that, it was like, I had a transformation of my own and realized how my faith helped me do this, because some days I really have to pray because people really be pissing me off. But it's teaching me balance. It's teaching me how to sit. It's teaching me how to sit and accept that space that I'm in. And even though I think I've been doing that, I'm more willingly doing that now and accepting it as a way to see more clearly the battles and the struggles. And so that meditation and that worship and all of those things are finally, I think, coming to, it's starting to come together. And on top of that, I'm going to Egypt in July. So the questioning of my faith may transition a little bit more as a Black person, as a person who's on some kind of journey. And I realize that I've been on this journey for a long time. And so a lot of things are actually are coming closer and closer together. So, yeah, so I really I really enjoyed that whole experience, and it came at such an important time in my life, and I really appreciate it. So thank you.
And Naeem, do you want to sort of chime in? Like, is there a memory that you have from the program or something that's sticking with you?
Yeah, definitely. So, we during the time of our time with Radical Faithfulness, I transitioned out of a job, and I had young people that I kind of needed to take care of, that were kind of dependent on me, and I think I relied extremely heavily on that. And throughout that process, I was kind of able to, cry, process, but then identify what I needed out of it. So I like talking to kids every other day now. I think I'm allowing them to be young people, to be young adults. They call me when they need me. One of my young people is in Puerto Rico right now. He sends me pictures, doing some service work. I cried, but I'm figuring out what Naeem looks like as a 25 queer Black male in the world. Like, what does it look like? And then Radical Faithfulness kind of helped me look at myself in a really deep, a really deep way.
How much of that oop is like the experience? This is a question I had, but I don't think you heard me.
No, I'm sorry, what was the question?
No, I said, how much of that oop was like the experience?
No, listen, that was a really hard experience. And that was perfect. That was a perfect way to encapsulate that.
For all of y'all, because I want to shift to questions soon, but I'm interested in hearing, like, what would you want to tell someone who is interested in joining the program? Like, is there a story, a lesson, an experience that sticks with you that if someone was interested in this program that you would want to share with them? And maybe you've done it already, so maybe there's a second, but if you haven't, there's a real invitation. Yeah, Wendy. You're muted, Wendy. I would love to hear your voice, so it'll take a moment.
Okay. I don't know if this has changed, but people should bring their own garlic because they act like they never heard of that.
It is so true. Food, there are many experiences of food at Pendle Hill, and it is something that can be amazing and something that can be treacherous. Oh, yeah. We haven't ever made this program happen during Bacon Week, but I have an experience that Angela may have. I'm gonna pass it to you, Angela. You raised your hand.
Well, the food issue is definitely a reality. For me, it was the change was really good. I'm a carnivore, and the experience of being there with such good, healthy food from the grounds was a blessing for me, and really definitely affected my my attitude later on, particularly as I got out and started really being intensively working, on all the work that I had done there at Pendle Hill. The thing for me that I would want to share with others about the experience
was that for me, it was like a breathing space. I kept waiting for, and this was a surprise to me too, because I kept waiting for, okay, the shoe is going to drop, and then there's going to be all of this pressure to do this, 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 and this, and never quite experienced that. I think it was that I hadn't anticipated that the purpose for being was for, you know, just that, come have space to breathe and really go deep within yourself and try to discern with a supportive community, you know, what's going on inside with you, and what are the things that you need to do, or you need help with, or you need to do whatever in order to take your next intentional steps. So for me, it was a very, in spite of the fact that initially the program was very time intensive, but there was, it had a very spacious feeling. So that was a very good thing for me.
Go for it, Nasim.
For me, this was one of the exercises I think during our first time, and it was in the art gallery, I believe it's called, and it was basically an arts and crafts activity where I guess we were to envision, I'm not really sure the prompt, but it was, I guess, the first time I was ever able to visually see the challenges and the obstacles that my young people, my community, my elders, the adults, the elders in my community face. And it was a really heart-wrenching thing as to why people operate and navigate the way they do in North Central Philadelphia. So it was definitely a very humbling experience. I think I like meditated for the rest of the night in like how, like I understand my people better. And like I think I needed that to see that, but I also needed that to remind myself why I go so hard. I started today at like 6 a.m. and my last meeting doesn't finish until 10:30, and I was like, oh, okay, it makes sense now. Like you're doing this for somebody who may not understand, but you got it. You got to keep doing it, and you got to keep your head down. Make sure you talk to everybody. Everybody matters. Everybody should be embraced in North Philly because they matter. And oftentimes we feel like we get trampled on. So it's like, oh, I get it. I get it. So it's just a I get it activity. So I don't. Hopefully that answered the question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it did. It did. I'd ask you that same question, Lena, but I imagine you tell people these stories often, and I want to have one last question. And Kathy, if you have a question, I want to invite you to either chat it or unmute soon while I set everybody else up for a next thing. I want to invite you all to get to each ask each other a question. So I'm going to randomly choose names. Choose numbers for everybody. I'm going to randomly assign people. Basically, I'm doing it very quickly. I would do it more random. Oh, you know who can do this? The internet has this thing called a random generator. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to randomize your names. And once I randomize your names, each person will get to ask a question to somebody else on here. And Lena. All right, randomize. Great. Okay, the first person is, what's going to happen is, Lena, you get to ask Wendy a question. Then Wendy, you'll get to ask Nasim a question. Nasim, you'll get to ask Angela a question. And then Angela, you can ask Lena one. And I'll move us towards the end.
Okay. Wendy, were you able, I guess my question for you is, how do you feel hearing a little bit of what Naeem and Gail have shared? And how do you feel for your experience in radical faithfulness?
I feel like I was a lot less, I didn't have so much of the personal experience exactly. It had more to do with me trying to locate myself, you know, as a revolutionary at that time in Stadium Stompers and Left Roots and Sanctuary Advocate Coalition and the other things that I was doing then. So I think I didn't feel the same degree of like personal catharsis and all of that. But I think that's okay too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Nice team. Nice to see you. I just want to hear a little reflection about the relationship between your revolutionary being and your spirituality and your faith.
For me, I really, honestly, I don't think I connected the two until radical faithfulness, honestly. I always felt like they needed to be separate, specifically in my work with Soil Generation, Urban Creators, Treehouse, the nonprofit revolutionary radical faithfulness work I do, or the radical work I do, excuse me, never really connected until I guess radical faithfulness, and it was a really humbling experience where I felt like it was kind of an evolution of like me coming to who I am and me being like 25 now and entering a new phase in my life. It was interesting and it was really humbling as I felt like it was all new terrain. So I was constantly learning and constantly crying and constantly praying and constantly in meditation because I was not ever sure if I was doing the right thing, I guess. I used to question myself as to whether I was praying the right way, right? Like, was I asking God for the right things? Was I manifesting the wrong things? Was I putting the wrong energy out into the work I do? Was I doing the right work? Am I qualified to do the right work? Is this God's plan for me? And it was like, oh wait, Naeem, God put you here for a reason, bro. You good, relax, chill, you got this. You are doing the right thing. And it was just reaffirming, like, it's been hard, but it's going to be hard. Somebody got to do it. So, yeah, that's me. I'm asking Angela a question, correct? Angela, how are you? I'm Naeem. Nice to meet you. What do you feel like you would tell yourself when you first entered in versus now? Like, what would you tell yourself? Okay.
What I would say to myself, if I was just beginning the Radical Faithfulness program and reflecting back, was basically just to chill. Just being aware that most of the pressure that I experience is self-imposed, and that just the reality between faith and action, we have choice. We have choice about how we're going to react to something and how it's going to affect us. Um, and I would just ask myself to just relax, just relax. I was blessed with a very special grandmother. I know we all think that about our grandmothers, but at one point, I can't remember. I must have been about 9 or 10, and somehow it came up in the conversation, that saying of being on the fence. And she must have heard me say it more than once, because she said very emphatically to me, she says, Angela, there is no fence. And that's the thing that has stayed with me through my entire journey. I guess it's the best, it's similar to that saying, you're either for something or you're standing against it. So recognizing that our actions have real intentional consequences, and that we're all doing this dance between our faith and our actions. And I guess the deciding factor based upon our particular charge is how we choose to respond to the invitation, to that invitation to kind of, the Radical Faithfulness program was probably the most significant program for me in terms of really pulling together and having this sense of grounded call. And so there was some real stepping out experiences that I had during my time there that has really made it foundational for the development of the program that I'm working with now. The whole the Friends Center for Racial Justice, which was a little seed that I was working with when I was there, has now been in existence in like 4 years. And I don't know if I would have had the sense of destiny about that had I not had the experience of really pondering it in community in a real intentional way there.
Yeah. Angela, do you have one for Lena, which will be our closing?
Yes, Lena. I want to know where do you find your joy? Where do you find, because I know that the work that you do is pretty labor intensive, and what keeps you going when you have such a public arena to be present to?
Thank you for that question. I think one of the most profound things that gives me joy and that I learned in Radical Faithfulness is how much resources out there from spirit, from myself, from other people. And I think what gives me a lot of joy is connecting with other people in a really just an actual real way. I think I'm totally someone who got entangled up in some of the stories of, we got to be perfect. There's such thing as doing it the right way, and you have to just kind of be tight and in yourself and work really hard in this way, and you have to figure it out. And if you don't, you're a bad person. I think that's a story that I was really taught growing up. And I think what gives me joy is just I can make mistakes. I have stuff to offer even though I make mistakes. And it gives me a lot of joy to be connected with people in that kind of imperfect, human, messy way. And to like, it gives me joy to have, you know, like build relationships with folks where we can be really real with each other and be like, you made a mistake. You know, like I can laugh at you because you made this mistake, and you can laugh at you because you made this mistake. And yeah, I take a lot of joy in like the deep, like spiritual knowledge of like, oh, I don't have to be perfect. And I like constantly have to relearn that all the time. Like I'm constantly having to like unpack that out of myself, unlearn that out of myself. But it gives me joy to be with people and not be perfect.
So thank you for joining, everyone. I am so grateful for this. And as an invitation, following Lena's thing that I thought would be a closing. So there was a lot of contracting. And I just invite you just to expand out a little bit and just remember your expansiveness. Whether you do that by moving your body or by sitting still and remembering. So just remember your expansiveness in this moment. Thank you all for your time today, whether you watched it now, live, or later. And safe journeys. And until we see each other again, be well.